Show.
All right, everyone. We had a great episode this week with Lynn Morehouse talking about official Strongman Games. Before we get in the episode, we just want to remind you all, we have a Strongman giveaway going on right now. Super easy to enter. Ton of prizes in it. It's a huge giveaway. We're paying for someone to go to any level show and giving you some expenses. And a ton of companies have chipped in to give away a lot of prizes in it as well. So just go on our YouTube, 580 Strongman Giveaway. It's pinned on our Instagram and get entered. We're almost at 700 subscribers. That's when the giveaway ends. So subscribe to our YouTube, go check out the video and get entered. Thanks. All right, everyone. Welcome back to episode 153 of the 580 Show. Myself, Frawley, Dante, and we're joined by special guest Lynn Morehouse from Official Strongman Games and Train Strongman today. What's up, Lynn?
Oh, doing well. Happy to be joined with you guys.
Yeah, like I said, we really appreciate the time. Got a ton of questions about the upcoming Official Strongman Games, and it's crazy. We're 2 weeks away.
Don't tell me. It's bad enough that I know the date.
Yeah. So how do you feel 2 weeks away?
Every year it's like this. The month before an event, and I believe you have run events yourself, so the month before you really question why the heck do you do this? And then of course, all it takes is, during the event and afterwards, you're planning the next one. So I'm aware of what's going on, but it's still stressful. And I also personally abide by the model of, I would rather be overly optimistic and set unachievable goals that I usually can't reach, but I believe that I get further than if I just chose a reasonable goal and hit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you say we run events, which we do, but 300 and I think 96 confirmed athletes, right? And 38 countries, I believe.
Yeah, we almost were at 40. We had 39, but the gentleman from Congo unfortunately tore his bicep in training. So we're getting up there for sure.
That's crazy. That is so crazy. Like, I mean, just when OSG started in 2017, right?
Yeah.
And you look and it's 2013 or 2023 now. Did you expect 38 countries to be coming? And how crazy is that for it to actually be true now?
I'll be honest, I could have told you 38 countries' names back in 2017.
I still don't think I could without the OSG page.
But to be honest, now it's become sort of a baseline. I was lucky enough that I was able to take the family to Africa for Africa's Strongest Man and Woman, which for the first time, sort of multiple people promoting have gotten together. And they had 11 countries in Africa represented. And OSG right now, this year, only has 3 represented for Africa. So you can just see that Strongman is growing. The ability for athletes around the world to have competitions. And now there's, I don't know whether it's exposure or a path, but there's goals for them. Whereas before it would have been only local. Now all of a sudden, Africa, as an example, has this governing across all Africa, not just Zambia's strongest, South Africa's. It's all of Africa. And one big reason for that is they are a qualifier for Worlds. And from meeting those athletes, it meant so much to them just to have someone come to them. They're always traveling out. No one ever comes in, that kind of thing. So no, 38 is just the beginning. I think it won't be but a matter of a couple of years and we're going to hit 50. And, that's just really exciting when you think that in 2017, we had some international athletes, of course, but outside of Europe, UK, USA, Canada, it just really wasn't existing. And so even just the massive amount of people coming from Australia, I mean, that is a long trip. And it's really exciting to see a good group across almost every single division represented.
Right. So what was before we go into all the OSG stuff, how like the trip to Africa, what were the athletes? What were the athletes like? Like, was there a lot of representation? Like, what was, I guess, the experience in the competition like? And do you just foresee, I guess, strongman in these countries growing more and more with these opportunities?
Oh, definitely. I'll tell you this. Some of the physiques of the athletes, I mean, if you've ever met Blake from South Africa, he's a specimen on his own. But there's gentlemen in Zambia who have just gotten into the sport, and their base level of just muscle and athleticism is ridiculous. We're talking backflips and things like that with these guys. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes. The gentleman I mentioned from Congo, he actually had 3 other athletes, and they primarily spoke French. So you think about just some of the barriers that they have, but they came in at a novice level, and they're seeing the potential, and everyone wants to really share the culture. That's the thing that kind of blew me away with these athletes. They were so friendly. And there is no crowd better than, like from what I saw, a crowd in Zambia. That was insane. It was 115 degrees. They were outside, no shade. 300 people lining the fence, cheering for absolutely everyone the entire time. So much energy. It was wild. You would not have seen that in the U.S. They would have been huddled in chairs and times. I mean, there was not a single chair. There was no shade, and they just stayed there and were so excited. It was incredible, and it made you interact with them because they supported so much. I saw athletes that were fairly introverted. By the end of the competition, they're going down the line high-fiving. I mean, it brings out that energy. So that environment, those athletes, once they actually kind of become a little more mainstream, able to compete elsewhere in the world, we're going to see some really incredible athletes. I mean, you think about Iron Bibby as an example of just, untapped potential, and untapped. He has world records, but you still realize he doesn't probably train or have the equipment or the just consistency of an average high-level athlete in the US or the UK, and he's doing what he's doing. These guys are incredible, and their attitudes are fantastic.
Yeah, definitely so many untapped markets for strongman, which is so exciting, like you said. Mm-hmm. So all these countries, all these athletes are coming to Charleston, West Virginia this year. Yeah. What made you land on Charleston, West Virginia? And I guess the venue looks really cool. If you want to talk about it a little bit and just kind of explain it.
So this was my the first year. I was involved in a layoff in December of last year, and I had to make a call. I had been promoting for 9 years, but I had a full-time job with income source. And I knew that I had the choice of either getting another job, and frankly, I know myself, I would have put a lot of effort towards that job, make a name for yourself, establish, a good rapport with people, and strongman would have taken the back burner for a little bit. Or I take the leap and do strongman. So I took the leap, and one of the first things I decided to do was actually kind of shop around. So I put together what I believed was, the OSG package, what it was we were bringing to town. And, I kind of laid it all out. I had some great mentorship, from a friend that used to work for IMG running World's Strongest Man. He doesn't do that anymore, but he had a lot of good advice and whatnot. And I got to talk to about 35 different destinations. And, there were some that were fantastic destinations that I felt we would have been lost. Any given weekend in those locations, there'd be 5 different things going on. The news would be caring more about this sports game at this bigger arena. in Charleston, one of the things that really clicked with me when I was speaking with the Visitors Bureau is for that weekend, we're going to be the show in town. All the restaurants are going to know you're with the Strongman. I mean, from the airport to the hotel, everything's going to be aware the Strongman's coming. And yes, it's a smaller location, but that has some benefits. The airport has free shuttles directly to the hotel, or the hotel has shuttles to the airport back and forth. That's free. The venue is walking distance from the hotels, and the venue and hotels are walking distance from their downtown restaurants area. So it's really very convenient for an athlete, especially an international athlete that might not be as comfortable in some of the larger areas where there's, just like, okay, you're 25 minutes away, do this, that kind of thing. I thought back to a bunch of times I've competed where you arrive and you still have to go an hour or 2 hours from the airport to get to your hotel. And you have the call of, okay, do I rent a car? All this. Daytona Beach for me, I thought was going to be a little bit different because they have an international airport right there. But the cost of that airport was so much higher than Orlando that it doesn't matter. People are driving or flying to Orlando and then driving. So I took that into account, that I could go and look at flights and say, okay, from London to Charleston, $600. And they're right there. They don't need a car. They don't need anything. The hotels themselves were cheaper than Daytona because that was more of a resort. And a big thing for me, growing that spectator base, that fan base for the sport, there's a lot more people within driving distance of Charleston than Daytona Beach. For
Sure.
Daytona Beach, you had to have been already deciding you're coming. This is not a convenient thing nearby. So there were all those factors, but the number one factor is that weekend, we're going to be the show in town. We're going to have the news media. I've already been talking where they're talking about having some of the athletes on the news before I even get there, because athletes will arrive earlier than I do. That's what we're looking for. We just want to be kind of get that moment of a little bit of exposure.
Yeah.
Now, is that something in the future that you could potentially see the venue changing from year to year? Are you interested in that, or is it more of a relocation right now and then reconsider down the road?
So I've had this conversation with, Charleston as an example.
Sure.
They'd love to have us for 3 years. And, I was very upfront from the beginning. I see this as a rotating event. So, these athletes can only compete at that highest level for maybe, in my opinion, on average 5 years. Wouldn't it be a shame if all those 5 years were in 1 or 2 locations when they could have been, exploring more of the world?
Absolutely.
That being said, do I think it goes outside the U.S.? One day, yes. It's a world championship. It absolutely should. What you see is my capabilities start to expand. The first couple of years, it was in my town. It was in the Raleigh-Durham area, very convenient. Except for if it snows. And then we went down to Daytona Beach. It was further away, but it was right on the I-95 corridor, so it was drivable distance. Charleston, still drivable distance, but what we're seeing is, the possibility of me taking this further and further away goes to, okay, eventually this could be hosted at, a destination outside the U.S. One of the conversations I've been having with people is really that balance between, having something be more affordable or something at more of a destination. And I've started taking the stance of, I don't want to make it cheaper. I want to make it worth it. That was reinforced for me when I was in Africa again, because I was with a large group of South Africans on the same weekend that South Africa was in the Rugby World Championships. And by the way, when they won, I've never seen cheering like that in my life. That was incredible. But they had some figures, and they showed that they estimated 35,000 people from South Africa flew to France for that event. So South Africa, in general, is a poorer nation than the U.S. and whatnot. And that was just a stark reminder of, I'm sorry, if it means that much to you, you will find the way to do it.
Sure.
And, I can't imagine how much they spent to go and watch this rugby match. But 35,000 people go from South Africa to France. This isn't a small trip by any means. And it's like, no, I don't want to make this cheap so that you're like, it's so cheap, I might as well. I'd rather be like, I don't care what it costs, I'd have to be there. And, I'm not at that stage. I'm not jacking up the rates, but that's the mindset.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing about Charleston, I know Frawley's company has work, or you have an office in Charleston, right? And he was talking about, you can speak on it, Frawley, but like local people that aren't involved in strength sports at all or strongman, they're actually talking about it. Someone from his office was randomly going. And so I think that's a very positive reflection on you, Lynn, and that you're correct that the location is going to actually put a huge emphasis on the athletes and the event that upcoming weekend.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought Frawley was like, so-and-so from the office is going. I was like, oh,
he said,
I thought he was competing.
He said they were talking about it on the news, and he was like, yeah, are you guys coming down? Because we're only about a 3.5 hour drive. And he's like, yeah, I saw it on the news the other day, and I live 10, 15 minutes away. I'll be there.
That's
and
cool.
He's a guy that casually strength trains, but he's not into the strongman ordeal, right? Like, but he saw it and he's like, yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Well, frankly, we need to go beyond friends and family. I go and say that, for strongman to really grow, it absolutely needs to tap into a fan base. And most people don't know, but my relationship with the official strongman team and Giants Live in the UK, I get insider information. And one of they had like a demographics, and like their most common attendee was like a mid-40s woman. And it's like, that is, that is a fan of, and primarily they're heavyweight pro strongmen on that side. So, the fan base may be different, but the reality is the fan base wasn't, some guy who owns a gym or some other strongman or powerlifter or bodybuilder. It was a fan. And so, we're going to go there. And that's another thing, just, from Africa, those people were fans. And I was kind of jealous that there was no sense of toxic masculinity or anything. It did not matter. Every single person was so impressed with people who had physiques. They treated it as, my God, you must be so disciplined and all this, where I feel like in the US, it's like, oh, you're so full of yourself and, all this. And it's like, no, over there, they were celebrated, man, woman, it doesn't matter. You guys were doing something, and, the discipline it must take. I was jealous of that because, we just don't necessarily have that. There's a group of the population in the US that, for strong men and strong women aren't going to see this as, us trying to better ourselves. They're going to see it as a negative, where we're trying to, draw attention to ourselves because we're so desperate or something. And it's just not true. But
if you've ever been to a strongman comp, it's the complete opposite, where everyone's like typically a teddy bear and super nice and everyone's supporting each other. But that's a great point on having to actually bring fans in, because I think the whole actual event changes when you have fans instead of just my mom cheering for me, and so on for every single athlete. You get an actual like world championship, like professional feel. So I think that was a really great point. And I hope people from Charleston come out.
Well, I certainly appreciate when your mom's there's cheering.
Yeah, me too. But we need them, but we would like other people too, I guess. It's funny too, because every time I'm on Instagram scrolling, I get the Charleston ad now. I don't know if you guys have got that yet, Frawley or Dante, but I get different news networks from Charleston, and it says like coming December 1st through the 3rd, and then it has one of like Lynn's promotional pictures. So yeah, pretty cool. Okay, so I'm a first-time competitor at OSG this year. What, I guess, just advice would you have for people like myself making their first trip? I know it's a new destination, but things to expect, to keep in mind. Everyone that's going pretty much is experience in the sport, but what would be some advice specific to official strongman games?
Well, I don't know if you've watched some of the the heavyweight pros talk about the difference between Giants Live and World's Strongest Man. The difference of a multi-day show that's at a little bit slower pace because of TV versus a 3.5 hour production where you go. That's one of the first things I would say is you're going to need to kind of control your energy levels, because you do have 2.5 hours between events. You're doing 2 events each day. You need to be able to amp up, but then also calm down. There are some people who take different approaches. I've seen people who will go and take a nap in the corner. I'll see people who will literally just start eating or go back to their hotel room and come back. I think the best advice I have, though, is you can't stay amped up between both events. You do need to find another way. First timers, I will see constantly warm up way too soon. We've got a full-blown warm-up area, which is a little different than some of the larger competitions. So you have that ability, but I try to control the flow so that only 2 divisions at a time are warming up. It's like I know you're a masters athlete and you feel like you need to warm up, or actually it's more typically the 80-kilogram athletes that warm up for an hour and a half straight. It's like, no, just calm down and then also just enjoy the experience. It's a reunion. And that's what's been so exciting lately is there are athletes that cannot compete. And it's not like, the ticket was non-refundable, so I'm going, I guess. It's, no, of course I'm going. I want to cheer on all my friends and whatnot. So I think the people that do best are the ones that maybe relieve some of the pressure on themselves and allow themselves to cheer on other athletes in the same division or different divisions, and actually kind of experience a little bit of downtime as a fan. I know when I'm competing, a lot of times outside of my little social circle that's all competing together, sometimes I don't get to enjoy the competition because it is fast enough that you do need to kind of already be changing your shoes and getting your gear ready over here. This is slow enough that you can support your friends and you can make new friends. And I think that the people who come in and put a ton of pressure on themselves and say, I absolutely have to win this. And it's like, just do your best. That's why the top 10 is now something with the medal. It actually has turned into a goal unto itself. And it should be rewarded and awarded that, hey, you achieved something by, make it to top 10. A lot of people can't do it. So yeah, as a first timer, enjoy the moment a little bit. You can get really lost and there's a little bit too much time to just be focused on yourself and the next event for 2.5 hours. You need to distract your mind onto something else. Otherwise, you're just going to spin in circles, and stress yourself out like, okay, overhead didn't go well. Have to nail this frame carry. For 2.5 hours, that would be horrible. Go distract yourself or, either calm down or go cheer on someone, make some friends. But don't just get focused on your own performance. It'll actually end up being a negative with a competition pace that has that much time between events.
That's great advice. My next question is, how do the events get selected for OSG every year? Do you just select them? Do you have like a kind of board? It's just like a general like curiosity question.
I select them and I have some criteria. First and foremost, the first 4 events I consider a semifinals. And that has to be a balanced competition on its own. You couldn't do that without an overhead or without a deadlift. It's just not possible. Or I should say, it's possible, but it's not fair. And so you can start to say, all right, if for 4 events, we typically in a competition will have 5 or more, but for 4 events, you're like, okay, I need an overhead, I need a deadlift, I need a loading, and I need a moving, or, you start to get kind of these main buckets. For me, I also have, all right, I did this last year. I like to spread things out, like not have the exact same every single year. For example, I love overhead pressing, but I love all overhead presses. I don't just love log, So if you look back to it, we've done log, we've done axle, we've done Viking press, we've done circus dumbbell. And what my mind was, I really want to do a block, but you can't do block for reps. And can't really do a max event at OSG. I do ladders to achieve a pseudo max just for the efficiency's sake. And so I was like, you know what? It's a fairly dangerous event. If it was the last implement of a series, so that you could take your time and hold it and be safe, you don't have to rush the down command, all this kind of stuff, I was like, then it might actually work out well. And so I built from that out. I also had been seeing some of the nickel stone carry at Giant Slab, and I was like, my God, that would be cool if only everyone could do this. And it was similar to the car walk, and I was like, well, why can't they? Let me see what I can do. And so this was an example where I reached out to David at Sticks and Stone, because he had made replica Husafel stones. I was like, do you think you can make a replica nickel stone, and we could use Cerberus's Denny handle, something that anyone can get, and then maybe make it the weight for women, and then I load weights underneath so that it's still a rock for everyone, that kind of thing. And that just came together. Did I think that that was sort of enough on its own? No, I kind of wanted to add a frame anyway. But that event, I wanted to be a combo of not just another moving event. I really wanted to push the fact that it's a grip event, not enough strongman contests, test grip. And I can tell you from hearing some of the comments, I think we've been doing a lot of farmers and not a lot of frame. I think people are starting to realize that frame might be a little different, and they need to train it a little different. So that's kind of how these events come together. The Go Rep Survival Challenge was an example where you get creative with, you're talking to an organization that wants to be involved in strongman. So you're like, all right, how can we make this work? And then you find out, they've got things like the sand medicine ball, but it only goes to 100 pounds. And it's like, could you take it to 350? That kind of craziness. And they're like, yeah. And so that's the kind of partner I want to have. Now, do we throw in some of their staples? Of course. Yeah, we'll go and do something. And people are going to moan about it a little bit because it's different, but it's by no means the majority of that event. The majority of that event is the sandbag carries. The backpack has a small impact to that overall ability. It was just as much a cardio event before as it is now. Wearing a backpack does not suddenly make it CrossFit. It was already cardio. It was already just bodies on the floor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I try to make a balanced contest for the first 4 events. And then, last year I tried to go to 3 events for finals. And of course, I with the hurricane, it was the condensed time frame anyway. This year, kind of taking a backpedaling to be safe, I was like, let me go back to 2. Let me make and solidify 2 events on finals, and then we'll revisit going to 3. And the reason is, you want those final events to also feel almost like a contest to itself. Even though the points carry over and it's 6 total events to choose a winner, the finals events, one of the challenges is with only 2 events, you really almost can't do an overhead or a deadlift without doing both for that same balance issue. And so like for this year, the sandbag toss is a nice explosive activity that's a little bit different than the other events. And then I do like finishing on Atlas stones because frankly, I've got a beautiful set of Atlas stones from Will Ramirez, and I fell in love with stones from the very beginning. Will it always be stones? No, we did power stairs in 2019. That was super fun. But, stones right now is still that test that I think kind of belongs in strongman somewhere.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you highlighted them real good and you made really good points. And I think, the finals are those true blue blood, like strongman events where you got sandbag toss and stones. But like the events that you mentioned, you have some really new and kind of like unconventional events, which I think is cool for strongman. It's like the sport of unconventional. So which of the new events are you most excited to see like athletes on display doing? Like between the go ruck, the Denny carry, the press medley. You got a yoke. We didn't even talk about pressing a yoke.
I'm gonna cheat and choose 2.
Okay.
Because and so the Go Ruck sand medicine balls are amazing. So their system for tightening up is with a lacing system as well as the Velcro. What that allows you to do, and they're perfectly the diameter for the weight, so that if you put in that amount of dry sand, it will be very firm, and then you lace loosely, then you tighten it up. It keeps its shape so well, and because of that, it's going to test some people because it is harder than a normal sandbag, to carry. And I just, I'm excited to see that one. The other one is I wasn't expecting this at all, but the anchor yoke. Unfortunately, some athletes have lost teeth over this, and all that because it's very different than a yoke. So, and I've been getting so much insider information from the folks in Australia who have this equipment. And by the way, part of my stress is I haven't had this equipment arrive yet, but I have a tracking number. It's landed in the United States and now it's on a truck. So it's like, yes, but that curved bottom really has a couple of interesting things that does. One, it does improve the safety a lot. But even more than that, that implement is only 60 kilograms, so it's 132 pounds. What that means is when you load that thing up, so much of the weight's at the bottom that it's absolutely like a weeble wobble where it just goes boom. It doesn't do much at all because the percentage of weight at the bottom is so much more. And so it's so much more safer than people think. But also, if you are out of balance, that swing is going to be horrific because almost none of the weight is in the crossbar. It's all in the lower end. So I'm expecting, I've told people you're going to have to hold the lockout, but I'm expecting some core engagement that people aren't prepared for.
Yeah. No, they're definitely interesting. It's fun to see so many athletes like on Instagram training all these new events. You know what I mean? Like everyone kind of trying to mimic the anchor yoke, and everyone's got a Jansport on for the Go Ruck challenge. So I like different unconventional events because, like I mentioned, that is kind of strongman. And I think that's one thing I fell in love with was the ability to have to adapt as an athlete. Just because we all know you go to a comp and their farmers are different, little changes like that at the local level. So I think it shows the adaptability aspect of strongman, which I think is cool. So I was just curious.
You've hit on one of my favorite things of this time of year, because every division is kind of going together. I'll jump back just a tad. I remember talking to some of the world's strongest man athletes, just in the outside of the event times. And they talk about the training and leading up for it, and it's kind of lonely because no one else is doing that contest. You got to drive for a while if you're lucky enough to train with someone who's actually going to be at the same competition. So yeah, you might have friends that help you load or whatnot, but there's not that team camaraderie. With OSG, you've got in a single gym sometimes every division represented, and it starts to build these different groups, and people travel because it's like, oh, they've got a block, and I'm going to do that. And so it's not just every time I hop on Instagram, I can see someone doing a deadlift ladder or throwing on a backpack, as you said, but you can kind of be like, okay, they hate it too, or something like that. And there's this sense of everyone in the community is doing the working towards the same goal for a little bit. And I like that. Obviously there's some competitions ahead of time, and it's nice when you can see that, someone's training specifically for your event as opposed to just a general block. It's exciting that way for me.
Yeah. How many volunteers roughly does it take to run something like official Strongman Games?
So I always err on the side of I'd rather have 10 great people who I've worked with in the past than 30 new people. That being said, I've been doing it long enough that I've got 30 great people that know what they're doing, that I've worked with in the past. I always try to let that expand though. I'm trying to do things more and more in shifts, as we all talk about like judging and things like that. Man, the total number of down calls these people have, so I'm trying to have even twice the judges I need so that people can get a break. The same thing goes for the staff members. So I'll have 8 team leads for 4 lanes so that I can have essentially full-on teams. And I absolutely have 8 people who I can delegate that task to. And trust me, when I try to get on the floor to help, they'll yell and get me off. They'll be like, all right, Lynn's trying to get on. We need to go faster. That's a great team, but it absolutely takes, I would say 30 people to run efficiently. And that's not even including, another dozen that are just in charge of live stream, light production, things like that. Photography, videography, all of that. There's easily 50 people you will see in blue shirts running around trying to make all this work. And absolutely more than half of them are, like I was for so long, doing it just 100% volunteer. You're spending your own vacation time, your own money, your own hotel room, everything. The lifeblood of Strongman is still the volunteers to make that happen. And the best volunteers are athletes that maybe have a spouse that's competing, maybe has a best friend that's competing, or maybe they didn't make the cut because they got a little nagging injury or any of those things. They know what they want, and they absolutely know how much this means to everyone. They try really hard.
For sure. If you've been there before, you can put yourself in the athlete's shoes. So that's a great point. I always say that at our local comps is, if you're going to yell at someone today, yell at me, because these people are giving up. It is really crazy and humbling to think, even at the local shows, the amount of time and effort and away from their families, their jobs, whatever it may be, just to come and help us do Strongman, because we still are at that level. So that's a great point made by you. Frawley, Dante, you guys have anything that came up when I was kind of rapid firing questions?
I jumped in when I had something. Pretty good discussion.
I think people are really excited to see. I mean, you mentioned it, but the anchor yoke. I thought it was cool that like a company outside of America is getting like a company as a main event sponsor for OSG, right? With Standard Submit. And I think that's another step in making it a world championship. I know it's a world championship, but making it even more of a world championship, because the one thing I've heard people say is they're Americanized events or whatever. So I think that's super cool. The Denny stone handles are from Cerberus, which is essentially anyone can get, wherever you're at. And, having this Australian company and then Sticks and Stones, it just seems like the events are coming together really cool. And Kabuki as well. Top level deadlift. I mean, people that are good deadlifters love Kabuki bars because they have good extra whip.
Yeah.
But
unless you're the kind that says no, all the records need to be on a super stiff bar. There's always going to be opinions.
Yeah.
The reality is Kabuki Strength is an example of a great company that really does want to support the athletes pulling as much weight as possible, and that's exciting.
Right.
Standard Submit, that is a company I've been following for a long time, and it's like these people are doing some of the best equipment in the world. And when they used to have the Arnold Australia, I was looking at some of the implements, and this is pre-Rogue Invitational having Strongman, and they were the ones doing the crazy rig setup that you're like, oh my God, that would be incredible to do. And I've been talking with Mason, who runs that, for years. And it was one of those, it doesn't make sense until it starts to make sense. And, it takes a number of years to be able to prove the value and be able to go and say that it's like this sponsorship is not, he's not looking to make sales for more Australian equipment to Americans. What he's looking is to, and he's done this because he's also involved in the strongman sort of community as a whole for Australia. He's trying to make the world understand that Australia is a hub for strongman and can produce some of the best athletes as well as the best equipment. And, between you and me, he's 100% been pitching Australia as a location for in the future. He's like, hey, I'll make whatever you need. So, these are good relationships to have. And,
Sure.
Very much they're using this to say, hey, we're over here. We're really far away. We have the biggest disadvantage of any athlete coming in because it took us 30 hours to get there. But we're going to, we really have some great things going on for us in Australia. And I think the more people who realize what is going on there, the more it's going to affect the strongman community. And similar to Africa, the more people who will go to these other countries. It's not about bringing every country to us. It's about going to these other countries as well, these other destinations. I mentioned to someone, I was talking about when the IFSA World's Strongest Man split, and I watched all the IFSAs, but I couldn't tell you any of the real destinations because that wasn't really a focal point. They were indoor, World's Strongest Man, for all of its, pros and cons, I can tell you each one, and kind of like the destination is linked to, the events or the victor. And that is a goal of mine. I would love for people to be able to remember OSG when it was in Charleston, OSG when it was in Daytona. Even though we're in the indoor venue right now, I do want to highlight other aspects of that destination. And eventually, yes, we're gonna be at some of these crazy places, and you'll be like, oh my God, the stories I have from when I competed in strongman, I got to travel the world. That be great stories.
Right. No, that's great. And on the deadlift, just last thing about the events, like being such good equipment, is that new Kabuki bar as the fifth and final bar in the ladder that I don't think really anyone has gotten. It's like their own version of a mammoth bar, right? And no one the Sasquatch bar. So that'll kind of be debuted at OSG, right? I mean,
I was so excited they made the little end cap with the OSG logo on it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yep. I just posted on my story today actually about that. And so, that's also an example where, you know, they want to have a little bit of the mark in the history of it as well. I went and pitched to them, hey, I've already announced this. Could you do it? And, those kind of conversations, and, just having the guts to go and say, hey, these specialty bars are really cool. And it really fits Strongman because you can then start to use tires. You can use bumpers or deep dish all the way out. It adds to that spectacle. You can potentially, because of the whip, maybe lift a little bit more, but it looks cooler than a bunch of 55s, stacked close together. And that's what Strongman's all about.
For sure. For sure. So I guess my last question, and we did touch on it a little bit at the beginning of the pod, was your long-term vision. We talked about, you see in the next couple of years having 50 plus countries, which I think is awesome. You had just mentioned going to outdoor venues, but, in the future, to highlight where we're at. So, long-term, give us some thoughts you have for official Strongman Games. 5 years, 10 years, I know it's crazy to think about it because it started in 2017. We're in our 6th year, but, just speak on that real quickly.
There's a lot of ideas rolling in my head. There's a few. I absolutely believe that I would see a annual docu-series following the strongest men and women to reach that title, where maybe it's not, the competition footage, but it's more of a documentary series following those athletes' experiences going there. That's a goal of mine. I do think I would love to see World's Strongest Woman as a TV show return to primetime on an equal playing field as World's Strongest Man. I don't know how that fits in with, because I consider World's Strongest Man, and Giants Live to be just geared towards this show a little bit more than the sport. And I think there's OSG is a little bit more sport, even though I'm bringing in more of the show. I don't know what that looks like today, but I know that would be a huge milestone to see that return. And it doesn't have to return on its own. There could be others, but just imagining this thing that left come back, I think would be really great. Of course, I would love to get to the point where, and this comes from stability financially with the outdoor venues. You're introducing more risk, and even just from the live stream equipment has to be slightly different. You notice that if you've been to World's Strongest Man, they basically have to create a small village to support that competition. So the budget is higher. I'm talking with folks from Ironman on how they get high-speed internet on these remote locations, because, I do think Strongman, there's something raw about it. I'd love to see more things outdoors. It's nice to be in an arena, and maybe that's that sports side. But I think these exhibition shows, it's kind of just nice to think about doing some outdoor stuff. And when I really think about the growth of Strongman, yes, of course, I think more spectators fill in an arena. But more than that, I think of viewers from home. I think that I think back to when I was in my teens and 20s. If it was on TV, even in a hotel room when I'm on vacation, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be here the next 2 hours because, I'm going to watch this. And I personally believe if we can make Strongman back onto that on-demand video experience, everyone loves it once it's on. They don't know when it's on. They don't know where it's happening. And frankly, our live experience, it just isn't quite there yet. But watching it is something that has a lot of really cool experience, where it's curated, or if it is going to be 8 hours, it's kind of in the background where you can still kind of do the different things. I think we can really grow the fan base with the content that we're producing. And I'm really excited about that. And the last thing I'll go and say is a selfish thing. When I started Train Strongman 10 years ago, I went and said two different sort of mantras. One was I wanted to bring the world's strongest man experience to the weight classes and to the women, which, fast forward, I'm getting close. And then the second was I want Strongman to be a vehicle that takes myself and my family around the world. And that's also going in that direction. And I think that there's a lot of athletes that kind of have that similar goal. It's like, I love the people. I have no illusions that this is going to, make me millions. But boy, if I can have stories for a lifetime because of what I did with a bunch of friends traveling the world, lifting weights and having fun. So yeah, those would be sort of my 5 to 10 year goals.
Yeah,
You're certainly getting there.
I love the idea. I love the idea of having like the UFC embedded kind of videos for the strongman.
Yeah,
I love just casually watch them on YouTube like during the day, and it really kind of gets like a behind the scenes of who the fighters actually are. So I think that's a great idea for some strongman athletes.
Thank you, Dante.
Yeah, and it's something I think us three talk about a lot is having cooler destinations for strongman, because it seems like we screw that up a lot in the sport. And it's something where you can make a vacation out of it, like you said, make memories, but still do the thing that you really love to do, because it is still a hobby for everyone essentially. So being able to parlay those things in with one another, I think is such a cool thing to make experience with your friends and family. So yeah,
it goes back to that. Don't make it cheaper, make it worth it.
For sure.
So,
yeah. It all went full circle, right?
Yeah. If the destination is someplace, it's on your bucket list, it's in Iceland, it's in Australia, it's in Norway, that immediately is like, oh my God, I kind of would love to compete there. And maybe the family would be, cool with me doing this over here because they know we're going to do these activities afterwards.
Exactly.
That being said, I do have to be, of course, mindful, that cost is a factor because this is a hobby sport for so many of us. But I do think wholeheartedly, if you can turn this into an experience that's not a negative, it's a full positive for your family, you will find a way to be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Lynn, we appreciate the time so much. Make sure Official Strongman Games, December 1st through the 3rd in Charleston, West Virginia. If you're not going to be there, make sure you get the pay-per-view link. We'll post it from our social medias and make sure we're reposting Official Strongman Games. But one way or another, make sure you tune in because it is an amazing weekend. You can hear just from Lynn speaking how passionate he is about it and how amazing he's going to make this year. Just make sure you turn in. And Lynn, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
No worries. I've got a question though.
Yeah, sure.
3 people here and only one's competing. So when am I going to see Dante and Jason on the field?
Down the line.
Hey, I've done online qualifier before. I didn't quite make it. I took 24th in 2021, so I still had a little bit of ground to make up. So maybe one day.
All right.
Yeah, I just gotta get stronger.
You just put them on blast, Lynn. No,
it reminds me how weak I really am.
All I would say is, get those numbers up on the online qualifier next year. See where it's at because, you're going to hear all about it from Josh, and he's going to be telling you, "Oh no, it was the best ever. You got to do it."
No, I'll be there. Yeah. I'll be there to support Josh.
They'll be there.
We'll be there.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, Lynn, thank you so much again, and we really appreciate the time and good luck to you and your team, December 1st through the 3rd. And I can't wait to be there as a first-time competitor. I'm really, really excited.
It's going to be a great time.
Thanks, Lynn.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.